Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome back to my short story project. If you've been following along on my channel, you know that what I decided to do this year was to read one short story, kind of classic American short story from an American author once a month. We've done Sherwood Anderson, I did a story by Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston. Last month we did, obviously I think I've done, last month we did Hemingway, is that right? Yeah. And then, we did Faulkner, I think, and then we did Hemingway. And this month I wanted to do The Jilting of Granny Weatherall by Katherine and Porter. This is a story that used to be anthologized quite a lot in American literature books for, high school students. I believe that's the first time I read it. At the time that I read it the first time, I didn't realize some things about Katherine and Porter, which make the story seem a little bit more resonant to me now, which is probably just foolishness and self-delusion, but it still does. Katherine Porter was born in Texas. I didn't know that a long time ago, in a little town called Indian Springs, I believe, and then her first husband was actually from the town where I grew up. Not that that's a very good statement for the town, because he was physically and emotionally abusive, and she divorced him. Katherine Porter led an incredibly interesting, varied life. She was an actress for a while. She was a political activist. She was particularly outspoken on the matter of the execution, the murder trial of Sacco and Vanzetti. She was really activist there. She was an actress for a while. She was a journalist, and then she kind of settled down to be a writer. She's most famous for her short stories, even though she did publish a novel called Pale Rider, or just Pale Rider. I can never remember. No, sorry, she published a series of short novellas, long short stories called Pale Horse, Pale Rider, and then her only real novel was Ship of Fools, which was published, I think, later in her life. Her first collection of short stories was called Flowering Judas, which was published in 1930, and The Jilting of Granny Weatherall is a part of that first collection. So, to me, this is a really good story. As always, I'll leave a PDF so you can read the story essentially for free down below in the show notes. So if you want to stop now before going on, this is a really good story, I think, in that it uses stream of consciousness in a really effective and surprisingly efficient way. So the story is told from the mind of Granny Weatherall as she essentially lays on her deathbed. She is, in fact, dying, and we are privy to her inner thoughts, and we only see the events and the people through her mind, and most of the time her mind is confused. She's 80 years old, she's near death, and she has a hard time separating reality from her memories of the past and reality from her dreams. And so that's the mind that we're in. And despite that, and as confusing as that is, and as it can be, once you really get your footing, once you really realize where you are in reading the story, then the episodes of her life, the important episodes of her life, I think kind of play themselves out, and we learn things about her and about her life that I find really interesting. So just to kind of give you some basics, we learn that Granny Weatherall is feisty. She does not appreciate the doctor who is visiting her at the beginning, and is kind of condescending treatment of her. She feels like since she's so much older than he is, he should treat her with more respect. We learn that she likes things neat and orderly, that she has kind of a penchant for things in the right place, and then quite frequently we also learn that in her life nothing was like that. As neat and orderly she liked things to be, her life really wasn't like that at all. We learn that she was involved in some way with two men, and that she's worried that her daughter will find the love letters from those two men in the attic where she herself came across them. We also learn that she's incredibly tough. She once fenced 100 acres by herself. And through that we learn that her husband died, leaving her with children. We learn that she experienced the death of one of her own children. And as the story indicates, we learn that she was jilted by a man named George. And we kind of go through her thinking and her mind in which she kind of wants to be able to prove to George still that she got over him, that the jilting wasn't that devastating to her, and yet in her dreams, in her kind of fever dreams at this point near her point of death, we also learn that he probably was her dream man, and the life that she made with her husband was of, was her settling in some ways. We learn a little bit about her children. We begin to kind of experience the decline of her faculty. She can't seem to speak. She can't seem to communicate near the end of the story, even though she can hear what others are saying to her. She has an increasingly difficult time separating reality from what's going on in her mind. And then in the end, she becomes conscious of the fact that she's dying. One of my favorite things in the story is the way in which Katherine Porter uses Granny Weatherall's pillow to indicate Granny Weatherall's state of mind. So I'm just going to read you just some really short clips to give you some idea. So at the beginning of the story, just after the doctor has kind of left and she's been angry with the doctor, or in the midst of that, she's laying on her bed, and Porter writes, "The pillow rose and floated under her, pleasant as a hammock in a light wind." So that at the beginning of the story, this I think gives you the idea that Granny is still able to experience things that are pleasant, that she still is able to enjoy things, and that she is perhaps less conscious of the fact that she's dying at this point, and able to take comfort and solace in things, even from something like her bed. And then later on, the pillow changes. So as we get later on in the story, about halfway through, Porter writes, "The pillow rose about her shoulders and pressed against her heart, and the memory was being squeezed out of it. Oh, push down the pillow, somebody. It could smother her if she tried to hold it." So again here, I think in both cases, this is Porter kind of using the pillow to indicate this transition in Granny Weatherall's mind, that at the beginning of the story she is convinced that she will get better, that she will be able to get out of bed, and that it's nice to be able to sleep and relax on the pillow and have nothing to worry about. And then by the end of the story, or as we get to the middle of the story, the pillow becomes oppressive, and laying in the bed becomes something that she realizes is threatening her life, because, as we know, since you've read the story, Granny Weatherall will never get up. I think this is an incredibly good story. I think the stream of consciousness here was used pretty perfectly. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below, and as always, thank you for watching.